Welcome back to the Athletes Podcast. This is episode 116 featuring Christopher Spring, a four-time Canadian and Australian dual citizen bobsled pilot who comes to us live from Vancouver for this episode of the Athletes Podcast, sharing his insights, knowledge, and experience of over 15 years in the sport of bobsleigh, as well as his tips, tricks, pieces of advice for that next generation of athletes. So many of you asking for applicable and actionable pieces of information from athletes who are at the top of the stage, fresh off the Olympics. Chris graced us with 50 minutes of his time and did not leave anything on the table. I sincerely appreciate his completely open and honest approach to this conversation. We dive into the van life and what exactly he needed to do along his journey to get to where he is today, having competed in 4 separate Olympics. He dives into each and every one of those, shines some light on the pros and cons of it, and just some of the amazing people he's been able to compete with in the sport, representing Team Canada. Amazing episode, 116 of them in, just getting started, folks. Thank you for being along for the ride. Here we go. It's probably a good place to start for the 116th episode of the Athletes Podcast featuring Chris Spring, a 4-time Olympian bobsled pilot, as well as a commercial pilot. First of all, thank you so much for coming on the show. Super excited to share a bit of your story, who you are, whether that's the van life, whether that's living the bobsleigh life, the unconventional sport that it is. Would love to maybe have you give a 30 seconds Cole's Notes version of your intro after I gave a brief introduction there, and maybe we'll just ask some questions in between and have some fun for the next 45 minutes.
Yeah, that's great. Well, 30 seconds. It's like, well, what can I fit in?
Okay, we'll do 3 minutes then. That's better.
Yeah, sure. I'll keep it short. You want me to do that now?
Yeah, let's get it.
Okay, sweet. Well, yeah, my name is Christopher Spring. I'm a 4-time Olympic bobsled pilot, but I like to think more importantly, I'm someone that can offer, something to everyone in the world. I think that there's a lot of connections that people have with people and with others, and I think that we take them for granted a lot of the time, and so we can learn a lot from people, and hopefully you guys learn a little from me today.
I love that. Well, let's start. Bring it back. You start the sport of bobsleigh at the age of 22. Not exactly a conventional sport to jump into in your early 20s. But maybe you could shine some light on what was pre-bobsleigh life and what led to that, because I know you have a pretty unconventional story for getting into the sport. But what other sports were you playing growing up? Elementary, high school? What kind of piqued your interest? Obviously, you had some pretty incredible athletic abilities that led to competing in the sport of bobsleigh, but what were those instrumental steps leading up to it?
Yeah, sure. I don't think that looking back at my childhood and my sporting childhood, my family, we didn't have a whole lot of money, and my parents weren't particularly sport or athlete focused. They thought it was cool that my brother and I had played sports, and they would come and watch our games or whatever it is we were involved in. But there were never questions like I feel like there are these days with children of okay, how are we going to improve your skills, or what can we do to make you a better, football or hockey player or whatever it is, right? These were not conversations that I had. It was like, hey, I want to play soccer. Okay, cool. There's a soccer club 5 minutes away. Let's sign up, and away you go. That's it. So growing up, I played all different types of sports. I grew up in Australia, so a lot of conventional Australian sports like cricket, rugby, both rugby codes, which a lot of people aren't familiar with both codes. Aussie rules football. I played soccer, like I said, and then kind of got into track and field in my late teens, transitioning out of high school into university. And so I wouldn't say that I was the best at any of the sports. I was good, I was a naturally good athlete, but I wasn't, some freak standout great at anything that I tried when I was a kid. And I think that made things fun, and it also made me really appreciate that you have to work hard in order to have success in sport. It wasn't until I was 22 that I was living in Canada. I'd been here for a year actually, and found the sport of bobsleigh. Just so happened to like stumble across it. Really, I was living here on a work permit and wanted to do something one weekend and saw that there's a bobsled track here that is where the magic of Cool Runnings happened. And I was like, oh, I remember this show growing up. Like, wow, there's a bobsled track. I don't know anything about bobsledding, so like I want to go and see what that's about. And kind of fell in it from there. I started asking questions. Oh, this kind of looks like a sport maybe I could try. Because I wanted to try a winter sport. I thought about, oh, okay, I ran track, so maybe I could do something that involves speed skating. Maybe I don't know how to skate, but how hard could it be, right? Not to take away from any of the speed skaters, because I know it's ridiculously hard to skate at that level. So good thing I didn't try that.
But that's the mentality you need to bring to the table as an athlete. You're like, obviously you possess the ability. You're like, man, I'll go do that. Whatever. I can take that on. It's a challenge. No big deal.
Yeah, for sure. Right. And people do. Right. And I think that's kind of the unique and loving part about bobsleigh, is that unbeknownst to a lot of people in the world, is they're actually training for bobsleigh right now without ever even knowing about bobsledding. And I guess that's kind of where I had fallen into things. I was still running track, but I kind of wanted to get a bit bigger and stronger. And, so I was kind of training for bobsleigh without actually training for bobsleigh or knowing about the sport. And, to get into the sliding sports at 22, especially into bobsleigh, it's actually quite young, whereas most people start mid to late 20s. It's a late entry sport where people are, we like to think of ourselves sometimes as the rejects from other sports. We tried and perhaps maybe failed at other sports. Some people didn't. We have a lot of great examples of professionals that were Olympians in other sports or played football at the highest level and then wanted to try bobsleigh too. But for some of us, we didn't make it in our first chosen sport, and so kind of fell into bobsleigh and found another love or passion.
Interesting. The two names come to mind. Jesse Lumsden, obviously playing CFL, incredible athlete, legs the size of oak tree trunks, which a majority of you as bobsledders possess. But also Niam Huey, who was on the show, who went to Brock, and she was a two-sport athlete, or multi-sport athlete, I should say, because she was hockey, rugby, as well as bobsleigh now. And like, I think they just found her at RBC training ground and we're like, yo, your numbers are off the charts. Like you said, she was training just an athlete, and they're like, you could crush in this sport. So obviously that worked out well. And like you said, you can apply your strengths to any aspect of bobsleigh in one way or another. But I'm curious, what was your first sport? Then you said you tried for others. Most of you go after one in particular. Was there one that you thought you were going for prior to bobsleigh coming in?
I would like to think that I was going to be making it to the show as a track and field athlete, running, sprinting 100, 200 meters. I was much smaller then and a lot faster, but definitely never to the speeds that needed to be in order to be successful in the sport. We've had Olympic medalists from track come to the sport. We've had multiple Olympians from different track and field events, and they're all world class, and I was never world class.
Hey, well, you know what is world class is how much Team Canada has improved over the past decade, not just in the sport of bobsleigh, but just in general. I think the amount of attention and support that athletes are getting has just X'd tremendously. And I'd love for you, maybe being someone who's actually gone through it and felt the support, to shed a bit of light on it, because it's one thing for me to say it as someone who's viewing it, over the past couple of years and seeing what athletes get. But I think it's important from your standpoint, like to maybe share the pros and cons that come from being an Olympic athlete, the funding that's available, the work that goes into maybe receiving that funding, because a lot of people assume you're an Olympic athlete, you were living this dream lifestyle, you've got tons of money, whatever. And it's like definitely not the case, having chatted with a ton of Olympians previously. But I mean, you take it a step further and live on your own, sometimes in your van, like, which I'm very jealous of, which we should chat about further. But like maybe shining some light on that Olympic experience and what maybe comes with being an Olympic athlete, pressures, costs, etc.
Yeah, there's a lot here to unpack. I think firstly that what you were talking about with Canadian athletes and our success over the last however many years, and you just see it building in all different types of sports too. I think a lot of it is to do with I think in the winter sports, a lot of it is to do with the 2010 Olympics that we had here in Vancouver. There was a huge push to be successful at those games, and I think that success or not, which Canada did great at those games, but even if the success wasn't there, the spotlight that it had on those athletes really impacted a lot of the younger athletes to have someone or something to look up to in order for them to be successful in the sport. And I think that crosses over from the Winter Olympics into summer sports as well. And we're kind of reaping the benefits of that now with a lot of sports and a lot of sports teams having so much success. And, with that success comes more money as well from corporate sponsorship, from federal government grants, things like this, that a lot of us as amateur athletes rely upon in order to have success. It's kind of it's a difficult funding model here in Canada with the way that it works with amateur sports. The more success that you have, the more money that you'll receive. And so, and when I say success, it's medals. That's what brings the cash. It's not top tens. It's not your best performances. We're a country that's driven on it's performance-based criteria, and medals bring that cash. And the more medals you're earning, the more success that you can have financially, and then that is going to breed more and more success. And so it might just start with a little bit, but then once that that cash flow comes in, and then there's more eyes on the sport, there's more people involved, it just grows and grows and grows. And we're seeing that now, and hopefully that continues to go down that road for many years to come.
Yeah, and you get some new Lululemon clothing along the way, right?
Hey, like there's little perks of it as well, like that. Yeah, exactly. But what you were speaking about of kind of the Olympic athlete and the Olympic life that some people think that we live, it's definitely possible to not only have success as an athlete, but also financially out of that as well, as an amateur sport athlete. I wouldn't say that I'm one of those people that have had that financial success. Not to the point where, there are some people that make some really good money as amateur athletes, and not all the time because of their success. Sometimes it's because they have a great story that is marketable, and people really want to get behind that and learn more about that athlete. And my thoughts on things is that, the more athletes that we can having that success, then the more beneficial it is for all of our sports. So I'm always pumped to see when, a teammate gets a new sponsorship that's like crazy good. And, I can see the benefits that they have with that. I'm like, wow, that's awesome that they're able to kind of, claim that as their own and be able to put that back into the sport and help grow and elevate it as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's phenomenal, really, because I think, to your point, people don't necessarily know what's going through on a daily basis, the lives. Like you said, you could be training years out, not even know when you're going to be competing, but every single day counts. And a lot of people just see the 2 weeks that happened that just passed over the Olympic break, and they're like, oh, cool, they did all right, they placed 6th, whatever. But like, no, that was, potentially a decade worth of someone's life getting to that point. And like they need to be congratulated for that place, whatever it is, despite maybe not getting the right result. I want to bring things back to like 2011, 2012, when you guys had that crash. Obviously, a scary moment for you as the pilot, but the sport comes with a lot of dangers associated. You're flying at 120 kilometers an hour down an ice rink, like an ice sheet, I should say. Can you maybe describe how you go about maybe some pre-race routines, how you get prepared, and like take us through race day, the emotions that come with it, the stresses associated? I know that one of the things that you talked about is like there's no courage without fear. You used to not have any fear, and now obviously you understand some of the ramifications. Like, shine some light on that day in the life of a bobsledder, because people, because of how unknown it is, don't necessarily know the real insights.
Yeah, of course. I think that over my career, I've slowly found out that it's quite normal to doubt yourself, even at the highest of the high levels. And I know that this is true for 99.9% of athletes out there, that even the ones that have success on a regular basis, there's still so much doubt within themselves and their own ability. And that's quite normal. And after that crash in 2012, where it was horrific. There was a lot of injuries and a lot of doubt within my own mind about whether or not I was going to continue or even have the ability to be a great bobsled pilot. And that same doubt still hangs around these days. I remember for the I don't know if it was the 2-man race or the 4-man race at the games, but this is 15 years after starting the sport, and arguably one of the best drivers of a bobsled in the sport these days. And I'm kind of going through my mind run and thinking about what I want to work on for this run, and I'm kind of going through corner 1, making my little steers in my mind, come out, okay, I have a nice entrance into 2, and kind of going over the ideal line that I want to execute. This is something we, so many athletes do, is just practice over and over kind of in their own mind. And as I'm doing this, I'm coming into, I think I was coming into corner 4, and the ideal steer is as soon as you get on, you kind of make this steer, undercut the lines to push the peak a little bit further around. And I don't make the steer in my mind. I think, oh, okay, I missed it. Oh, so what do I do now? Okay, maybe I'll try steer a little bit more. Oh, that didn't work. I released. Oh, now I'm too high, hit the roof. Oh, well, now I'm going to crash on the exit. And I'm thinking about this, maybe 2 minutes before executing my Olympic run. And I'm like, what? Why am I thinking that these are the mental images that are going through my mind as I'm trying to, get ready for, the biggest race in the last 4 years here. And, I'm mentally visualizing myself fail. And I think to myself, come on, man, like why does this happen to us? And I understand, and I have understood for a while, that this happens to so many athletes. Is we have this these imposters that come up inside of us somewhere. These liars that start to lie to us, tell us that we haven't prepared well enough, or that I don't know what the steer is in corner 4, or whatever it is. These liars, they come in and they like to try and upset our mind and the way that we want to work. And the best way I've found to combat the liars and to like settle myself down and trust that I've done the right thing is to reinforce the truth within myself that, okay, I've driven this track all week and had no problems in corner 4. So why am I even thinking about this? It's not a real fear that I have, because I know how to execute the corner. I've done it multiple times, many times this week. And so that truth allows me to kind of overcome those liars and get in the right mindset to hopefully have a great run, and which I was able to do.
Yeah, of course. Like, what was that feeling like after making that great run?
Yeah, it's another way that I've shown myself, like, hey, it's possible to do this, even with all the stuff that's going on in the background. You're able to quieten everything down and put the focus on one thing and able to execute. And it's validation that regardless of what is happening in your life or in your mind at that time, you're able to put all the focus on one particular, whether it's in bobsleigh or another sport, on one particular aspect and execute it to the best of your ability, and walk away knowing that you have the ability to execute even with things happening within your life.
Yeah. That imposter syndrome is something that, like you said, everyone suffers from. It's an interesting dynamic that we're playing with in our minds at all times, hey, and toying with that little devil on one shoulder and angel on the other, and balancing the two. Because I think if you don't recognize some of the negatives or what could be happening, then you're just living in fairy tale land over here and not maybe understanding the ramifications of your decisions and choices that you make. So it's like life, man. I think you got to understand what's coming and what you've got ahead, and like you said, dedicating full time towards it. Was there anything else in life that you did outside of sport that you can like apply to bobsleigh as such a unique competitive exit for you? Like, I'm always looking at athletes and saying, hey, like, Michael Jordan spent years of his life playing basketball, got really good. Halfway through, he's like, man, I want to go play baseball for a bit randomly, because they have that competitive edge and like that desire to do more, do whatever. I feel like for you, bobsleigh obviously was an outlet. You also got to live, explore our nation, do whatever you want to do. Was that another form of outlet for you outside of sport?
I think it's an outlet, but not necessarily for me physically, but for sure for my mind. I have a very busy brain that is very hard for me to just quieten down.
Okay.
And I find that you would think that if I'm by myself, then I have all this time to think and for my brain to go wild and for it to be very noisy. But I found that it was quite the opposite, is when I was by myself immersed in nature, whether I was out on the water or in the mountains, then it was almost as if I had a certain connection happening with nature in itself, and it allowed my mind to quieten down a lot. And it's something that I've really needed over the years, because my brain is so active, and it can be detrimental to me at times. Kind of like I was talking about with how it just kind of it takes a small note of what's happening, and then it runs with it, and then next thing I'm crashing in corner 4. And I have a way of, my brain has a way of kind of hijacking itself and running off with that, and taking some time out for myself really helps me to calm things down.
Do you have a therapist that you work with, or do you have specific kind of talk tracks that you tell yourself? I'm curious because, if that's something that you deal with on a regular basis, I'm sure there's methods for you to cope with that and turn it around. And I know you shared a bit, but like, this is an important topic, like mental health in sports, especially for athletes. Like you said, at a younger generation, always coming through the ranks, and everyone's trying to get a little bit better every year. This mental health has unlocked a totally new category over the past decade as far as what we can do, the positive affirmations that are associated. What do you do specifically that helps, or like that you've heard others do maybe?
Mm-hmm. I think that it's something that I'm still searching for.
Okay.
I found small bits of reprieve, I would say, or small ways that have helped, but nothing long term. And it's, I think, understanding or acknowledging that my brain does like to hijack itself and take itself for a ride. It was like the first big step for me to understand, like, hey, like I need some help here with things. I've sought out different therapists and counselors, medical professionals to try and help me with that. And I wouldn't say that anything in particular thus far has been like the solid solution. But that doesn't mean that I'm not going to continue to look, because I know that it's something that I need some help with, and I know that it will impact my mental health, not just as an athlete, but excuse me, also as a human being, and the way I kind of continue on in life after sport.
It brings up an interesting point about life after sport. I've seen videos of you doing your workouts on paddle boards in lakes as you're traveling around. What does, and how important is having a life outside of sport? I think that was one in that CBC documentary that I was watching on you earlier today. That it was really a stressor for you, was like, hey, it's important to be able to associate yourself with things outside of the sport that you participate in on a daily basis.
Yeah, for me, it's a way that I can identify as someone else a little bit too. I, a lot of people know me as Christopher Spring, the bobsledder that went to 4 Olympic Games. But I try not to be just that person. And I think that as an athlete, it's important to be, or to have, other passions outside of sport. You can get very tired mentally being a bobsledder or a hockey player, a football player, or whatever it is, all day, every day. If that's all you think about, if you live and breathe this, it can be very powerful for a short period of time. And then after that, it can, in my opinion, start to be a little bit detrimental. And so to have passion outside of that allows you the mental capacity to put that focus into your sport when you are doing your sport, or when you're with your team, whatever it is, training, competing. You have 100% of your ability to give 100% of yourself to that sport. And then when you're away from that, kind of leaving it behind, so that way you can return to it again, feeling fresh and ready to give 100% of yourself to it. And for me, it was just having like I said, a life or different passions outside of sport, whether that was living in my van, or now I have a bus actually that I use for trips, or, paddleboarding, surfing, snowboarding, all that kind of stuff. And then I found another passion in flying as well. So I think that, again, it allows you the mental break from sport that I think is so essential in order to have success at the high level.
I'm sensing the fact that you like being in control, whether that's flying the plane or flying your whatever it is. You're the pilot in control. Which, hey, and obviously, if you've identified those things as your strength, I'm glad you're in control. Rather have you steering the ship than anyone else. Maybe shed some light on what the 4 different Olympic experiences have looked like, having seen a variety, to say the least, in different nations. Maybe, I don't want to say rank them 1 to 4, but if you could provide maybe a little tidbit for each and maybe highlight from each of them.
Yeah, of course. I actually was asked a similar question by Katrina Lemadon during an interview at the Olympics. She said, in one word, give me one word to describe each Olympics. And I'm like, wow, just one word? Come on. But I'll start in Vancouver. And, I competed for Australia at those games. And I would say that the thing that stood out for me the most was that everything was, there was this spectacle. I didn't realize that it was going to be this like huge spectacle. And I know this sounds strange because, like, hey, it's the Olympic Games, shouldn't you know? But like, it just blew my mind that an Australian bobsledder that didn't really have any success leading into those Olympics could still like create some sort of news or something that people wanted to know about me. And I was like, wow, this is awesome. The crowds in Vancouver were crazy. In Whistler, like it's an Australian bobsled team in Whistler. Like half the population there are Australian, and so people were just going nuts. And we finished 22nd, and they loved it. They thought it was the coolest thing ever for us to just be there, right? So,
side note, sorry to cut you off there. I had to bring this up because I was in Vancouver originally from White Rock, South Surrey, British Columbia. So growing up there, I was in middle of grade 7 at the time of the 2010 games, as crazy as that sounds. But I remember this, and like the Australians were so fired up about every event and how their team would do, no matter what the place, no matter what the result, it was the best. And it was funny because, you know, you talk about that spotlight of how big the games were shining light on it. And I think that's honestly probably where this podcast might have stemmed from as well, is like how incredible those games were in 2010. So cool little caveat here. I didn't mean to interrupt, but let's continue to like from that first point. I think it's a small world.
Yeah, so that kind of set me up, and I was like, it fueled the passion within inside of me to want to continue and be a great bobsledder, not just an Olympic, not just a bobsledder, but a great bobsledder.
Yeah.
In Sochi, I would say that there was a lot of unrest going into those games as well. A lot of there was a lot of
turmoil.
Yeah, I'll just say whatever. I don't want to get too political here, but there was a lot going on leading into those games, and to have looking back to now that some athletes have been removed from the standings because of some doping implications. We finished fifth in the 2-man race. Jesse and I finished fifth, and I look at that race and I'm like, wow, I didn't even put my best foot forward, and we finished fifth. I felt like, the results, especially like for a couple years before that and a couple years after, the results just came. I didn't have to work hard for them. We'd be on the podium more times than not, even if I didn't have a good result, didn't have a good performance. We could still salvage a top 5 or sometimes a bronze medal and be like, oh, okay, like we don't even have to execute our best ability, and we'd still have success. And it's when I look back at those games, I'm really disappointed in the way that I approached them mentally. I just figured that the medals would just happen. And if I had my time again, I definitely would have changed the way I approached that. And I know that we would have won medals, knowing that I just by the way that I would have changed the way I thought about the way I approached it. And so I'm really disappointed when I think of those games. That I get disappointed knowing that I squandered a very unique and opportune place to be with a great athlete like Jesse. Not Jesse, he performed great. He pushed like insane, but I feel like I squandered this medal for us. I ruined this chance of becoming an Olympic medalist because of my mental performance. In 2018, I was really my team and I, 2-man and 4-man, we had a lot of success that year, and so again, we're thinking we're going to have success at the Olympics. And I took my, the things that I learned from 2014 and I applied them in 2018, and the approach was much better. And, we fell short, not just by a little, but by a lot. And it kind of made me think like, wow, like maybe I'm not going to be a great bobsledder, or, maybe that Olympic medal is so elusive that it's just never going to come to light, And then in Beijing, I really enjoyed the experience. I enjoyed competing with the guys I was there with. I enjoyed driving the track. I thought I really executed well in all of my performances, pushing, driving, the mental aspect of things. It all came together. And the unfortunate thing about it is that my team and I, we put down like one of our best performances in the last 4 years, and it wasn't enough to win a medal. And I think to myself, if I could have put down a performance like this at previous games, then we would have won medals. And it's the time that I put it down and it doesn't equate to a medal, it stings a little bit. And that's something I'll be thinking about for a long time. Yeah.
I was just going to let the power of the pause sit in there, because I think, it's first of all, thank you for being honest and raw, because I know that's not an easy thing to do, reflect on those and like maybe not having the results that you were looking for. But I think the fact that you were even there is like incredible. So don't lose sight of that, number one. But number two, like the fact that you are so willing to share these stories, and you can tell with the emotion there that you care deeply about, how you finished in those games. It's like, it's good knowledge for future athletes to understand and wrap their head around the fact that, hey, like these are pretty incredible opportunities, and it might be once in a lifetime for a lot of people. Very few get to 4 Olympic Games like yourself. But I mean, for me, I just like to reinforce like, hey, for some people, for some athletes, they may have regrets later on in life as to what they could or couldn't have done. But same thing for you right now. The fact that you're aware and addressing it is the first step in moving past it and moving on, and really showing to yourself, hey, like despite the fact that I didn't get that result, look at where I am today with all of the things. And that's what sport teaches people, and they don't necessarily realize going through it. It's like, man, I've evolved and developed so much as a human being. The fact that I'm stronger and can lift more or push a sled faster is like irrelevant at the end of the day, because I'm a better human being now.
Yeah, and I think that that's an important takeaway for a lot of people. The majority of athletes, we set goals, like the highest of high goals, like the pinnacle of our sport, whether it's, for me, winning a gold medal, Olympic gold medal, or people, winning Stanley Cup, going to Super Bowl, whatever it is, right? We want to be there, and we believe it. We believe we have the ability to be there. And then when we fall short, which is, 99% of athletes will fall short of their goals. People will, or the athletes will have a hard time addressing that and understanding that they didn't succeed in something that they set out to succeed in. And I think that what we lose sight of is what we learned along the way. And for me, or what we gained along the way. And like you were talking about, strengths and different aspects that we can have, whether it's physical or mental. And, I look back at my career so far, it's been 15 years, and I, haven't been fortunate enough to win one of those Olympic medals, but I have been fortunate enough to live a lifestyle that I have wanted to live, and to pursue a passion in life that really fulfills me as a person. And to be able to do that as a full-time gig, or predominantly as a full-time gig, is something pretty special. To be able to, like, that's a gold medal in itself, to be able to live this life and, talk to people like yourself, educate children of tomorrow. And I think that it's something that we shouldn't lose sight of as well.
Mm-hmm. Any athletes you looked up to, like idolized growing up, that you're like, man, I want to be like that guy?
Yeah, there's been a few over the years for sure, depending on what sport I was in. If I was running track, it was this guy. If I was playing rugby, it's this guy. I guess I could name them too. When I first started running track, Maurice Green was the guy. And I loved how confident he was. People would say he was cocky, but to me, he was confident. He went into the race and he knew he was going to win it. And I loved that. I loved that he had so much confidence in his own ability that it instilled confidence in his mind, and it showed in his performance. When I was playing rugby, a New Zealand guy named Jonah Lomu, who was like probably one of the greatest rugby players to have ever lived. And again, he was just like, you would say his name, Lomu, people would be like, oh my God, Lomu's playing for the All Blacks this weekend. Like, whoever they're playing, they've got no chance. He was the guy, and people respected how good of a player he was. They feared him. If he was on the field and he had the ball, it's like, hey man, show's over. He's taking that thing to the end. And so kind of forgot where I was going with this. Oh yeah, but there's like one person that has always been there, constant to me, and it's my brother. And this guy, he's a father of two. He works full-time job, and you would say that he has a busy personal life when it comes to looking after his kids and going to work. But he trains harder than the majority of athletes I know that have made it to the big stage. Like and just because he wants to be healthy, and he has small goals that he likes to achieve and challenge himself in all different aspects of things. And I think to myself, wow, this guy he's training so hard just for himself and for his for his own goals, not to be on TV, not for all this money, not that we're making money, but some people are. Olympic medals, things like this. That's inspiring.
I love that. It's an interesting thing when you have people who are motivated just strictly intrinsically, not for anything outside of their own health and wellness. Speaking of training, what does yours look like? Are you doing a primarily heavy compound lifts? Are you doing a lot of explosive work? Maybe shine some light on that workout regime so that people can get free trunks like yours when they're
trying to build their quads up.
It's pretty much these days. Now that I've come back from the games, I need a little bit of a break. But yeah, I would say early on in the season, we're doing like early on in the off season. So probably in the next few weeks, I'll start back up, and it's a lot of just trying to get your body back ready to train again. So we keep the compound lifts out of things to begin with, and we're doing a lot of I really should know the names of these things, but these types of lifts. But single leg stuff, we're doing
some isolated exercises.
Yeah, split squats, walking lunges, or like instead of benching, we would do single arm dumbbell bench, or so we're doing some like core lifts, but we break them down into something that's going to kind of get the whole body ready to go. Sure. And then after a lot of that and the hypertrophy phase of things, which is not like I love it, but I hate it at the same time. These long sets, with 10, 12 reps, slow, eccentric, like, come on. Like this really tests you as an athlete to, 6-8 weeks of this preseason, where there's no excitement of sliding or anything like this. You're just grinding it out. A lot of longer running as well. When I say longer, like I'm, doing kind of 80, 100 meter repeats. It's not, to me, it's not enjoyable, but you find the enjoyment out of it somehow. You embrace the grind and know that it's going to be beneficial for you when you do start those compound lifts, when you do start sprinting faster and doing more plyo work and things like that you're going to be a better athlete for it, and hopefully a little more resilient to injuries as well.
Anything specific you do with your diet during that training, hypertrophy phase? Are you having to like pack on some pounds, eat more food? Are they like setting goals for you to achieve as far as a weight is concerned? Like I just think removing layers of the onion for athletes to kind of get an inside knowledge of like, this is actually what happens is like, yo, I have 2 months here to prep. I need to put on X amount of weight using these workouts that I have over the next 2 months. This is what I got to do. Like, is it that formulaic in the sense that they tell you what you need to do, or are you setting those goals yourself and hoping to achieve them over time?
No, we work with our coaches with setting goals, especially when it comes to our like strength conditioning stuff as well. So I would think that like for me, I'm one of the smaller guys in the sport too. I compete at 220 pounds or 100 kilos. And it's tough to stay at that weight. And especially during the hypertrophy, longer sessions, like when we're, like I said, doing 100 meter repeat stuff like that, right? The weight just strips off of me. So for me and a lot of guys that I know in the sport too, it's just calories at that point. Like I can drop if I don't watch what I'm eating in terms of enough of a calorie intake for the day, I'll drop from 220 to like 205 in a couple months. It won't take long
Wow.
at all, and it's kind of like I'll be shredded and I'll look good. But when it comes to performance for the sport, the hardest part is putting that weight back on afterwards, right? And it can be a long, arduous task, and not one that your body, not one that the body will necessarily enjoy as well. Especially when it comes to injury prevention too, because if you're not used to being at that weight and then you get back, you're 205 for the summer and then I got to compete back to 220. Yeah, bad things can happen for sure. So it's important for me to eat as much as I can, and like protein is our friend, so just keep throwing that in there, whatever I can.
Packing on the protein, I love it. A lot of middle-aged men and women who are probably cursing your name right now for saying that you can drop 15 pounds in a couple months, like it's easy. But I actually, one of the things post games, I think it was the World Championships 2019, they saw you throwing back a hot dog post event. But I'm curious, maybe what your post game snack or favorite cheat meal was throughout the years, or go-to meal is now.
Yeah, it's a good one. I love pizza.
Pineapple on it?
Whatever, really.
Oh, okay.
This pizza in general, I'm not picky. Yeah, pizza is a great cheat meal. Especially, this might sound I don't know how people feel about this, but sometimes when I go to Costco, I'll just if I'm there and grabbing some stuff for a bunch of people too, because they're like, oh, you have a Costco membership, let me get on board with that. I'll walk out of there with half a pizza or a whole pizza and just start crushing that.
Nice.
It doesn't even have to be good pizza. I just pizza in general, but the pizza in Europe is the best pizza. Oh my god, man. Like, I can't say enough about that European pizza. It's great.
Okay, well, and it brings up a good point. Like, you get to travel all around the world for this sport, competing, and with your experience having traveled a lot in your own van as well, like top places that you've been able to visit because of the sport of bobsleigh, or outside of it, like, maybe some cool places that you suggest people go and travel to if they're not just witnessing sport.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we're very fortunate, and I remind myself of that all the time, especially when we're on tour and grinding through some of those days where you're like, oh my god, like I wish we were back in Canada. But it's not hard to look around and be like, whoa, like let's just take a second here. We're in Bavaria and in the small town Königssee in Germany, and the lake is right there at the bottom of the track, and it's like you're in like this cathedral of mountains surrounding you, and it's absolutely beautiful. And there's a few places that I want to return to in the summer, just because I've never experienced them in the summer before. And Königssee in Germany, it's in Berchtesgadens in probably about 2 hours from Munich. Very close to Salzburg, actually. Very beautiful there. It's like, I'd love to see what this looks like in the summertime, and the hiking and the lakes. Amazing. Just outside of Innsbruck in Austria, another go-to place. It's only a couple of hours actually from where I was just speaking about, and similar, just breathtaking views, and the people there too are just amazing. Everyone's just really welcoming, and great culture there. And then in St. Moritz in Switzerland, it's like the birthplace of our sport, and there's a lot of glitz and glamour that's around that track. And I think just going there in the summer and trying to feel that magic as well would be pretty special. And just to see the mountains, like we're pretty fortunate here in BC or in Alberta, surrounded by the Rockies, and the mountains over in Europe, they're a little bit different. And I think that they're just as magical. So I'd love to get to those places, hopefully in the summer. So if you're ever there, definitely check them out.
Yeah, I've got a list now compiled from, all these athletes who just get to see these incredible places. So now I'm chalking them up, and we'll definitely pick them off one at a time, slowly but surely. I got to ask about van life. It's something that I've considered doing with the podcast, going on the road. We did an AP tour a year and a half ago. We traveled to Quebec, Montreal, 5 days, interviewed a bunch of athletes along the way. I thought, given that we like to feature Canadian athletes, keeping it in our nation would be really cool. Just travel back and forth across the country, interview athletes wherever, whenever, participate in workouts, go through their sport, whatever the case may be. I'm open to opportunities. And I was like, man, you're the perfect guy to ask. Like, what are some essentials that I need to get on my list to just at least have a hope of being able to cross the country in a van?
Yeah, you'd be surprised that you don't actually need that much. A good attitude is probably the one thing that.
Nice. I can do that.
Yeah, exactly right. And then with that, you can basically figure anything else out. But if you are going to do a cross country tour, then I would suggest signing up for a gym membership that has like locations all across the country, because then you always will have a shower and a bathroom to use, right? And you can get some gains in along the way, right? So that would be key, definitely key. And I know a lot of people that do that. They're like, okay, we're gonna go down the west coast of the States, so how am I, where am I going to shower? Knowing that you can shower at the beach or whatever, but sometimes it's nice to have a warm shower. So gym membership, it's
true. That's a good call. I was thinking about that. Part of me is like, I got to reach out to maybe an RV company. Maybe they'll sponsor part of it if I promote the heck out of them. But I was like, the van, there's something about it. You get the van life. It's just, it's unique. Not a lot of people can say they've done it. So, it might be tough convincing the girlfriend to join me, especially without the shower. But I don't know. I'm sure you've had to cross that bridge.
Yeah, you make it work. And, I've always had kind of like an outdoor shower setup in those cases where you're in a bit of a pinch, or, you'd be surprised what some like baby wipes, and you just kind of give yourself a little baby wipe shower. You use like 3 or 4 of them and
you're golden. Man, I sincerely appreciate you coming on the show, shedding some light on your story and what you've accomplished over the past 15 years in the sport. I would be not doing my job if I didn't ask the question that we wrap up every episode with, asking our athlete, coach, nutritionist, whoever we have on the show, for you to share your biggest piece of advice for that next generation of athletes that we are working to educate, entertain, and inspire, which we've done all 3 of today. But to wrap it up, put the cherry on top, Chris Spring, what's your biggest piece of advice?
My advice would be to find out what you're passionate about and run towards it with everything that you've got, whether that's, school or hobbies, sport. You will work a lot more, but you will work harder and with more enthusiasm than anything else that you'll come across in life, if you have that passion and run towards it.
Truer words have never been spoken. Chris Spring, thanks to Ice Shaker, you get one of these sent to your door. I was a little nervous. I didn't know where I was going to send it if you were in your van traveling around, but I'm sure we'll be able to coordinate that. I sincerely appreciate you being the 116th episode on the Athletes Podcast. I hope you have a great rest of your day, man.
Appreciate that. 116.
Thank you, folks, for tuning in to the 116th episode of the Athletes Podcast, featuring Christopher Spring, 4-time Olympian. Guy was spectacular, to say the least. Big shout out goes to Ice Shaker, who's also sends 1 bottle to every single individual we have on the show. They get their name, episode number engraved. And we also should mention Perfect Sports. If you guys are looking for protein, other supplements, head out and check out perfectsports.com. Use the code AP20 for 20% off your next order. But I really just want to say thank you for you coming on, listening, liking, subscribing to our content. It means the world to us. Jordan Maslin is our producer and editor for the Athletes Podcast. I'm your host, David Stark. Thank you, folks, for tuning in. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye.